from the book. The book of history explains that destiny exists, but it is difficult to be believed by most people because it is very changeable. End quote. The book of history is one of the 5 classics. The others are the book of songs, the book of changes, the book of rites, and the spring-autumn annals. Our destiny has been accurately foretold, falling within the calculation of the numbers. The constant predestination does exist, but it is very difficult to believe. Why? There are variables due to addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Mr. Liao had refrained from committing wrongdoings and began to cultivate good deeds, thereby decreasing his bad deeds daily and gradually increasing his good ones. His act of reducing taxes became one of multiplication, no longer one of simple addition. With this multiplication, 10,000 good deeds were perfectly accomplished in a matter of days. If, however, he had done much evil, then in an instant it would have become an act of division, no longer one of simple subtraction. Therefore, there are indeed results from addition and subtraction, as well as those resulting in multiplication and division that arise from our thoughts and actions. And it is these that create considerable variance. These are constants, but they are not fixed. They change. The book of history explains that destiny exists, but it is difficult to be believed by most people because it is very changeable. The treatise on response and retribution further explains neither disasters nor good fortune will come without reasons and conditions. We invite them. In other words, they are the retributions or rewards from our past actions. From the text, destiny is not set, but is created and determined by ourselves. These are all true. End quote. This is also from the book of history, and it stresses the importance of virtuous cultivation, of how variables can surpass the constants. The teachings of ancient sages and virtuous ones are the truth, and therefore they are unchangeable. Thus, then, as now, we call them sutras. When we apply the teachings to modern times, they still hold true. If we do not believe in them and choose instead to follow our own ideas and thus commit wrongdoings, we will only increase our offenses. Even if we were to gain something in the moment, we would only gain something that we were destined to have. If we do not know how to cultivate virtues, then we will not be able to keep what we have attained. Not only can we not hold on to our wealth, we cannot even hold on to our lives. And if we cannot hold on to our lives, then what would be the use of having all that wealth? The world may be beset with disasters at any time. We may lose our lives any moment. Think about it. What is the real value of having anything else? It would all be useless even if we owned them. It is clearly expressed in the chapter of Universal Worthy Bodhisattvas, Conduct and Vows, from the Flower Adornment Sutra. At the moment of our last breath, we are unable to take anything with us, whether it is family members, friends, prestige, wealth. None of these. What we are able to take with us are the 10 great vows, to constantly keep them with us, never abandoning us, but guiding us to be born into the Pure Land. It is also said in Buddhism that nothing can be carried over to the next life except our karma. These are very important words of caution. Since we know that our karma will follow us like a shadow, we need to be diligent in cultivating good deeds, not to carry our negative karma with us. For to do so will lead us to the 3 bad realms. Good karma will lead us to be born into the 3 good realms. Pure karma will result in our being born into the Pure Land. From this, it should be clear what we need to do in our lives. We need to broaden our perception, expand our thinking. Instead of being concerned with trivialities and calculating our gains, our losses. Life is very short. It would be of tremendous merits if we could help, if we could benefit more people. If after reading the teachings of ancient sages and virtuous people, we are able to believe, to accept, and abide by the teachings, then we will receive inexhaustible merits and virtues. If we are unable to believe in the teachings, thinking them unreliable, this is due to our karmic obstacles. Because of them, we will miss out on this unsurpassably rare opportunity. From the book. I came to understand that both good fortune and misfortune are invited by our own actions. These are truly the words of sages and virtuous people. If one were to say that good fortune and adversity are all determined by the heavens, then I would consider that person to be ordinary. End quote. These are Mr. Liao Fan's true words of awakening. Great sages and virtuous people have true wisdom and are able to clearly see the true reality. Buddhas and bodhisattvas are unsurpassed sages. This talks about a constant. What Mr. Kong told of Mr. Liao Fan's destiny was common theory. What Master Yuan Gu taught for changing his destiny were the teachings of sages and virtuous people. Knowing this, why would we need to have our fortunes told? Why would we need to seek fortune tellers to ask how we should situate our houses? We need to believe in the teachings of sages and virtuous people, to know that our destiny is within our control and that we can create our own magnificent future. From the text. Tianxi, my son, I wonder how your life will be. In any case of destiny, we should always prepare for the worst. Therefore, even in times of prosperity, act as if you were not. When things are going your way, be mindful of adversity. And when you have enough food and clothing, be mindful of poverty. End quote. Mr. Liao Fan had his destiny accurately foretold. His son did not. And thus, his son did not know what would happen in his life. In actuality, there was no need to know. Mr. Liao Fan taught him that it was important to remember that even in times of prosperity, he was to act as if he was not prosperous. Thus, even if he attained great wealth and social position, became a high-ranking official with much prestige and much influence, he still needed to remember the times when he had none of these. Why was there a need to remember this? Because in the future, even if we become prosperous, we would do well to remain humble and courteous, not giving rise to arrogant thoughts or a haughty attitude that we have wealth and prestige while others do not. If we can remain humble, then we will nurture true virtue and good fortune. Even when everything is going very smoothly, we also need to remember when times were difficult. In this way, even when things are going our way, we will remain cautious and not become careless. Guliang-ju was a famous prime minister in the Shu Han period of the Three Kingdoms, 1700 years ago. He was able to remain successful throughout his life because he was careful and discreet. Right now, even when we have enough food and clothing, we need to remain thrifty. If we are constantly able to do this, when we have wealth and prestige, then we will be able to improve in both moral conduct and in benevolent behavior. A good example in Chinese history was Mr. Zhong Yanfan. Mr. Fan was from a very poor family background. When he was young and studying at way places, he had little to eat. Every day he would cook a pot of porridge, divide it into 4 portions, and have 1 portion for each meal. In this manner, he passed the days in a state of impoverishment. When he prospered later in life and became a prime minister, during the Song dynasty 1800 years ago, he was under the supervision of the emperor and was in a higher position than anyone else. But he maintained his simple manner of living and changed very little. When he earned more, he would think of those who were poverty-stricken and used his earnings to help them. By reading his biography, we learn that he supported over 300 families. With the income of 1 person helping 300 families, we know that they would have also been living in impoverished conditions. If he had lived affluently, he never would have been able to help so many people. He was truly one of China's great sages. The esteem that Master Yinguang held for him was second only to that which he held for Confucius. Mr. Fan's descendants continued until the early part of this century. This is because he fostered merits and virtues to last over 100 generations. The family of Confucius is foremost as an old and well-known family, followed by that of Mr. Fan. Mr. Fan's family lineage remains strong through 800 years due to his exceptional cultivation and accumulation of merits. Great good fortune is when we are able to share it with others, for in this way our ensuing good fortune will become inexhaustible. The descendants of Mr. Fan continued the family tradition of helping others until the early part of this century. Throughout Chinese history, there were not many families who accumulated this much good virtue. In his commentary, Master Yinguang told of another person, a Mr. Ye, the premier scholar of the Qing dynasty. His family lineage remained strong for 300 years. It is thus obvious that the utmost priority in life is for us to refrain from wrongdoings, to cultivate good deeds, and accumulate merits and virtues. From the book. And when loved and respected by all, remain careful and conservative. When the family is greatly respected and revered, carry yourself humbly. When your learning is extensive and profound, always think that the more you learn, the less you feel that you know. End quote. we would do well to avoid being overwhelmed by an unexpected favor. It is good for others to love and be protective of us. However, we need to think, what is there about us that is worthy of this love and care, is deserving of the respect of others? We need to be constantly apprehensive of the deficiencies in our abilities. It is good to think this way, to constantly reflect upon ourselves, to progress in our cultivation of virtue, and not to disappoint the expectations of others. These are all sufficient in eradicating our arrogance. Arrogance is one of the 5 major afflictions and is related to the other 4 afflictions of greed, anger, ignorance, and doubt. Indeed, this was a very good place and a very good way for him to start eradicating afflictions. By completely severing our afflictions, we will be able to uncover our virtuous nature, to truly achieve in our cultivation of virtue. From the text. When thinking of the past, we can advocate the virtues of our ancestors. When thinking of the present, we can conceal the faults of our own parents. When thinking of the country, we can think of how we can repay its kindness to us. And when thinking of the family, we can think of how to bring about our family's good fortune. When thinking of the outside, think of how to help those in need around us. And when thinking of within, think of how to prevent improper thoughts and actions from arising. End quote. Within this chapter lies the key to changing destiny. What we are thinking inside will be the guidelines for increasing our virtues and morality and for developing good deeds. In the past, Chinese education taught of the relationship between humans and spirits, and between humans and nature. It taught to be constantly thinking of the past, to honor and make known the virtues of our ancestors. If we were respected by society for our moral principles and ethics, knowledge and profession, we would honor our ancestors. In today's society, what is the driving force behind most people's hard work? Wealth, fame, prestige. Most people will do whatever is necessary to acquire these. Why? The acquisition of wealth urges people, drives people forward. If there were no wealth to gain, who would be willing to work so hard? Very few. In the past, the driving force behind people's hard work was filial piety. and their mindfulness of their ancestors and parents. They did their best in cultivating and accumulating merits and virtues on their behalf, and to honor them. This driving force is much worthier and nobler than that of wealth, fame, and prestige. This has been the tradition of Chinese culture and Confucian teaching for several thousands of years. Buddhism is based on the foundation of filial piety. Thus, the ritual of making offerings to ancestors and the establishment of ancestral memorial halls is highly regarded, as it is the ultimate root and foundation of Chinese tradition. If we were able to be filial towards parents and ancestors, if we were able to remember our root, then we will naturally be able to think and conduct ourselves properly to refrain from wrongdoings. When we are thinking of the present, we can conceal the faults of our parents. If the children are filial, if they have contributed to society, then even if their parents have committed small offenses, people will overlook them. People will praise the parents for having raised such filial, such honorable children. When thinking of the country, we can think of how we can repay its kindness to us. The country or government has the mission of being a responsible leader, parent, and teacher to us citizens, of providing a place where people can live and work in peace and contentment. In return, the citizens should be loyal, patriotic, and dedicate themselves to the country. When thinking of the family, we can think of how to bring about our family's good fortune. Being mindful of the family does not just refer to the nuclear family, but to the extended family as it was thought of in the past. As a member, we need to be mindful in creating family good fortune for the whole, not just the immediate part, but for the extended family as well. Therefore, when one person achieves good fortune, the entire extended family will benefit as well. When thinking of the outside, think of how to help those in need around us, always bearing in mind the interests of society. We need to do all that we can to serve society, to create good fortune for others. In today's society, the most urgent need is reviving and developing the education of morality and ethics. When thinking of within, think of how to stop improper thoughts and actions from arising. We need to stop improper thoughts from arising. We need to be mindful of what we are supposed to be doing and to let go of excessive ambitions. If all of us were able to do so, then we would fulfill our responsibilities. our society would be fortunate and harmonious, and the world would be at peace. Mencius explained that if people of noble character and integrity can be loyal to their responsibility, then in this way truth can be revealed. In Confucian teaching, this responsibility refers to the 5 human relationships, including those between husband and wife, parent and child, siblings, friends, political leaders, and the public. He also spoke of the 10 moral responsibilities. All of this means that we need to fulfill our responsibilities towards society and all others. Whatever we have responsibility for, we need to accomplish earnestly and diligently in order to create good fortune for our family and society. From the book, one needs to be able to find one's faults every day and to correct them every day. If one is unable to find any faults in oneself, then one will think that everything he or she does is all right. Then they will be unable to correct their faults, and improvement will be out of the question. End quote. Awakening is being able to detect our faults every day. It is the perfect, complete enlightenment. We start this process when we bring forth the vow to become an equal enlightenment bodhisattva. Once we discover our faults daily, we need to correct them. This is cultivation. It is to correct our thoughts and behavior daily. It is the true achievement in the cultivation of great sages and virtuous people. This is the key to changing our destiny, to leave suffering behind and to achieve happiness. When most people are unable to become virtuous sages in one lifetime and are unable to achieve in their cultivation, they will find that the problem lies here. To know our own faults is to awaken every day. Once we discover a fault, we need to correct it. In this way, we will build our strength from cultivation. To sincerely reform, we gain strength from our cultivation. We do not need to do a lot. If we were to find and correct just one fault every day, then in 3 years we would become a sage or a virtuous person. As practitioners who chant the Buddha's name, if we are able to correct one fault every day and to be mindful of Buddha Amitabha, then in 3 years we could achieve birth into either the high or middle levels of the Western Pure Land. This is the way to cultivate to become a Buddha. The question is whether we are willing to do so earnestly. We are deluded if we are unable to find one fault every day. If we do not know them, we cannot correct them. How can we hope to improve in this way? When there is no improvement, there is regression. We then fall behind. To regard ourselves as infallible, to believe that everything we do is correct, is the most horrible way for us to live. From the text. There are many intelligent people in the world who cannot make improvements in cultivating morality and virtue, nor can they make improvements in their work. Their failures in this life are owed to a single word: laziness. End quote. If we live for the present, if we are lethargic, if we are lazy, then we will be bound by our fate. How we are born and die, where we will go after we die, all accords with our destinies. Master Yuan Gu addressed ordinary people like this as Philistines who blindly follow what has been destined. They are what the Buddhas call pitiful creatures. These principles which Mr. Liao taught his son are the principles for both worldly education as well as for the Buddha's teachings. They must not be ignored. From the text. Tianqi, the teachings of Master Yuan Gu are truly the most worthy, profound, real, and proper teachings. And I hope that you will be well versed in them and practice them diligently. You must use your time wisely and not let it slip by in vain. End quote. Mr. Liao carefully wrote down the principles and methods that the Master had taught him in changing his destiny and passed them on to his son, hoping that he too would follow this method. Mr. Liao had achieved remarkable results from this practice, and thus he firmly believed in all the principles and methods that the Master had taught to him. We need to be very familiar with Master Yuan Gu's teachings, to ponder them deeply, to carefully appreciate the meanings within. When we are constantly mindful of the teachings, we will savor them. Then we will use them as the basis for our behavior and practice them diligently. We should not waste this life or allow it to pass by pointlessly. We need to broaden our perception, expand our thinking, instead of being concerned with trivialities, instead of calculating our gains, our losses. Life is very short. it would be of tremendous merit if we were to do more good acts, if we were to benefit more people. If after reading the teachings of ancient sages and virtuous people, we were able to believe, to accept, to abide by the teachings, then we would receive inexhaustible merits and benefits. If we are unable to believe in the teachings, thinking them unreliable, it is due to our karmic obstacles. And we will miss out on any real improvement in this lifetime. We will allow this marvelous, this unbelievably rare opportunity to pass us by. What opportunity? To learn the wisdom of virtuous sages and wise people. To learn the wisdom of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Recently, I was again requested to give Dharma talks on the Infinite Life Sutra. It is not possible to comply with this wish at this time because we do not have an English translation that has been approved yet of this sutra. But this really is okay. When I first began to listen to Venerable Master Jing Kong, I felt so frustrated because I could not read the Infinite Life Sutra, could not listen to any of teachers' talks without a translator. And at that time, we did not have the many excellent translators that we now have. I deeply felt the frustration of needing a translator for every word teacher said, when all those around me could simply walk in off the street and understand, listen to every word he said. But after a recent conversation that I had with someone who had listened to teacher's words, to his talks for many years, I realized there is listening and there is hearing. They were listening. I was hearing. I have had the great good fortune to be here in Singapore, to be a guest of the Amitabha Buddhist Society and the Singapore Buddhist Lodge. Everyone here at the Society and the Lodge work with a determination, dedication, and diligence that is impossible for me to describe to you. It is due to their generosity, their work, that I have had the time to hear a teacher who has spoken every day for more than a year. Please understand that in a talk such as this, when I speak, they are teachers' ideas, teacher's words. They are his understanding, his wisdom. I have little understanding, virtually no wisdom. Yet, in this recent conversation, I was asked a very basic question. And I intuitively understood. The person who listened to teacher every day for many years did not. For almost 2 months, I have been immersed in working on the teachings of a translation of a 20-tape series of talks on Liao's 4 lessons, which teacher gave a few years ago. It is an unbelievable opportunity that my fellow practitioners here in Singapore have presented to me. The level of understanding, the depth of wisdom in these teachings is as essential, is as profound as those in the teachings the teacher is giving on the Flower Adornment Sutra, on the Infinite Life Sutra, on the Earth Treasure Sutra. Such understanding and wisdom arise from the truly wise teacher and are to be found in his teachings, whether they are on Liao's 4 lessons or on the Infinite Life Sutra. The Flower Adornment Sutra, the Infinite Life Sutra, and Liao's 4 lessons all talk about the law of cause and effect, all teach us about changing our destiny. They all teach that everything arises from our minds, that we alone are responsible for everything that happens to us, that with proper seeking, we can attain whatever we seek: a son, long life, peace in our time, the ability to benefit all sentient beings throughout the universe in the past, present, and future, the ability to be born into the Western Pure Land, the ability to uncover our original, innate self-nature, the ability to become a Buddha. Whatever we wish for, we will attain when we seek with the mind, when we seek with the heart of utmost sincerity, purity, equality, and awakening. Selfishness and attachments no longer bind Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Even when they have a small thought, even when they perform a small deed, their merits are infinite. In understanding this principle, our every thought will be perfect, and our merits and virtues will be infinite. The understanding of the wisdom of sages and virtuous people, of bodhisattvas, of Buddhas, can be attained by our proper seeking. Amitabha. Thank you.
Nam all